Have you ever met someone who seems to know everything, yet somehow understands nothing? It's a strange contradiction, but one I've seen over and over during my years walking this earth. Watching how people live, speak, and respond to the world around them. And somewhere along the way, a powerful truth hit me. True intelligence isn't just about facts, degrees, or how many books you've read. It's about how you live your life, how you treat the people around you, and how deeply you're willing to learn from your own mistakes. But here's the twist, the part that most people overlook. There are unmistakable signs, 6 of them. To be exact, that reveal when someone is, well, let's say, not exactly walking in wisdom. Now, before you chuckle or roll your eyes at the idea of a list like this, hear me out. This isn't about judging others or labeling people as foolish. It's about something more important. It's about self-awareness, personal growth, and learning how to spot the habits that quietly sabotage not just our success, but our happiness. 2. Sometimes, we fall into these patterns without even realizing it. Sometimes, the people closest to us do, and they need someone brave enough to help them break free. So join me on this journey. Let's uncover together the 6 undeniable signs of a foolish person, each one carrying not just a warning, but a lesson and a mirror we might not expect to face. Because the path to wisdom doesn't start with knowing more. It begins with seeing clearly. Ready? Let's dive in. Sign number 1. A closed mind. Picture a fortress, walls built high, gates locked tight, not to keep people safe, but to shut out anything new. That's what a closed mind looks like. It's not a sign of strength or certainty, it's a stronghold of fear, pride, and stubbornness. People with closed minds reject ideas that don't match their worldview. They don't just avoid change, they resist it like it's a personal attack. To them, anything unfamiliar is dangerous, anything different is wrong. But here's the irony. Their outward confidence? It's often a mask, because real confidence comes from knowing you don't know everything, and that's okay. Take Mark, for instance. He was a department manager at a company I once worked with. Mark clung to the old ways like a lifeline, even when it was clear that his team was falling behind competitors. He refused to budge. A younger team member suggested using modern project management software to streamline work. But Mark shut it down immediately with a familiar line. "We've done it this way for 10 years. It works just fine." But it didn't. Other teams embraced new tools and soared. Mark's team, meanwhile, struggled. Productivity dropped. Morale declined. But instead of facing the truth, Mark pointed fingers at his staff, at market conditions, even at luck. He blamed everyone and everything except himself. A closed mind doesn't just block personal growth, it stunts the progress of everyone around it. The wisest people I've known are never afraid to say, "I don't know," or even better, "I was wrong." They stay curious, they stay open, they understand that being wrong is part of getting better. Stoic philosophy reminds us, wisdom isn't about always being right, it's about being willing to change. So if you ever catch yourself resisting a new idea just because it feels uncomfortable, pause and ask, is this fear or is this pride? Because only when we let those walls fall can wisdom take root and flourish. And now, let's move on to another all too common sign, one that keeps people stuck in place. No matter how smart they may seem on the surface. As we just explored, a closed mind can trap not only ourselves but also those around us. But if stubbornness builds walls, then blame becomes the shadow that holds us back from true growth. Sign 2. Constant blaming. I once worked with an event organizer named Lisa. She was in charge of planning a major conference, an important event with high expectations from the whole team. But when the day came, it turned out to be a complete flop. Attendance was embarrassingly low. Almost instantly, Lisa pointed fingers at the marketing team. She claimed they hadn't promoted the event properly. hadn't done enough to create a buzz. With absolute certainty, she placed all the blame outside herself. But as things unfolded and the truth came to light, it turned out Lisa had failed to send the event details to the marketing department on time. Her delay pushed back the entire promotional campaign, and by the time people heard about the event, it was already too late. Even after the facts were crystal clear, Lisa kept shifting the blame. She refused to acknowledge her own role in the failure. She wouldn't own up to her mistake. The result? Her colleagues lost trust in her. Her credibility took a nosedive. And not long after, Lisa stepped down from her leadership role. Responsibility, though often heavy, is the gateway to growth. Wise individuals admit their mistakes, not because they enjoy criticism, but because they understand that truth is the foundation of improvement. Stoic philosophy reminds us that mastering life begins with mastering responsibility. So if you ever find yourself falling into a pattern of blaming others, pause and ask yourself, have I truly done everything I could? Is there something I could have handled differently? Blame won't change the outcome, but taking responsibility, that will change you. Wise people don't run from their mistakes. They learn, they grow, and most importantly, they move forward stronger than before. And you can too. Choose the path of truth, of growth, of greatness. Now, we move on to the third unmistakable sign, perhaps the easiest one to spot in a room full of people. Have you ever met someone who constantly tries to prove they're the smartest one in the room? Sign 3. Arrogance over humility. Have you ever met someone who just couldn't stop trying to prove they're the smartest person in every conversation? The type who always has to have the last word, always needs to correct others, and never, ever, admits they're wrong? That's a classic trait of arrogance. The third undeniable sign of a foolish person. But here's the twist, arrogance isn't strength. It's a mask worn by insecurity, stitched together with ego. And it's one of the biggest barriers between a person and real wisdom. You see, truly intelligent individuals don't feel the need to constantly show off what they know. In fact, they often do the opposite. They listen more than they speak, because they understand one timeless truth: learning never ends. Knowledge isn't a trophy you show off, it's a garden you keep nurturing. While the arrogant person seeks validation, the wise one seeks understanding, and that difference makes all the difference. Coming up next, a story that shows how arrogance can silently sabotage not only personal growth, but even entire teams and relationships. Let's continue with the tale of a man who couldn't see past his own ego. We've just explored one of the most common traits of unwise individuals: arrogance overshadowing humility. Now, let's dive into a real-life example to understand just how destructive this can be. Michael. When arrogance leads a team to failure. Michael, a senior manager at a major corporation, always seemed eager to prove he was the smartest person in the room. In every meeting, he would dominate the conversation, interrupt others, and even ridicule his colleagues' ideas. At one point, the company faced a major project failure. Instead of reflecting, Michael immediately blamed his team, insisting they just didn't understand his brilliant ideas. But the truth was clear. It wasn't the team's failure to grasp his vision. It was Michael's arrogance and refusal to listen that ultimately caused the project to collapse. He dismissed feedback, ignored warnings, and pushed forward as if only his opinions mattered. When his boss later asked him to reflect on what went wrong, Michael couldn't name a single valid reason. His ego had blinded him to any opportunity for growth or improvement. Humility, the gateway to true wisdom. Humility, in contrast, isn't about thinking less of yourself, it's about thinking of yourself less. It means setting aside the ego to prioritize learning, collaboration, and progress. Truly wise people know they don't have all the answers, and they're not afraid to say, "I was wrong." Stoic philosophy reminds us, wisdom only emerges when we open ourselves to new perspectives, when we become teachable. If you ever find yourself caught in the trap of arrogance, pause and ask, am I chasing validation? Or am I genuinely seeking to grow? Wisdom doesn't come from making others feel small. It comes from helping them rise. The truly wise are guided by humility because they know. Real intelligence speaks loudest when the noise of ego grows quiet. And you can choose to be that wise person. Let humility lead you, and let growth follow. Up next, the fourth sign, one of the clearest indicators of ignorance, a lack of empathy. And it may be harming your relationships more than you realize. Previously, we discussed arrogance, a trait that can isolate us within our own ego. But now, let's turn to something just as damaging, yet often overlooked, the lack of empathy. Lack of empathy, the broken bridge between people. Often, we don't even realize how much harm a lack of empathy can cause. It's not just relationships that suffer. It gradually erodes the depth of our own character. I remember working with a colleague named Paul. He had a habit of constantly complaining about project delays, but he never once tried to understand why they happened. For him, it was simple. Results were all that mattered, whatever someone else was going through. That was their problem. One day, a teammate named Susan missed a deadline. Her son was seriously ill and in the hospital. Instead of showing understanding, Paul publicly criticized her in front of the entire team. He didn't care about Susan's situation, only the outcome he expected. But karma has a way of teaching. A year later, Paul's mother fell seriously ill, and he had to take time off work to care for her. It was then that he truly realized how deeply his harsh words had once wounded others. Without empathy, we lose more than kindness. We lose clarity and connection. A person without empathy doesn't just appear cold. They become blind to valuable opportunities for growth, learning, and connection through relationships. Stoic philosophy reminds us, true wisdom isn't about knowing everything, it's about forming meaningful human connections. Those who lack empathy don't just impoverish their inner life, they isolate themselves from others. And in doing so, they leave behind the lasting impression of indifference and insensitivity. Empathy is not weakness, it's a bridge to wisdom and humanity. When you pause and truly listen to someone, without judgment, you're not only helping them, you're also learning something powerful for yourself. A heart that listens, that seeks to understand, brings richness to your world. It gives you the grace and insight to move through life's complexities with compassion. And if you ever feel that you struggle with empathy, don't be discouraged. Start with something small. Listen with an open heart and without judgment. That first step may be simple, but it will begin to open your mind, leading you closer to authentic wisdom and inner growth. Up next, we'll explore the fifth sign, something that might seem harmless, but can quietly hold your entire life back, the fear of change. Are you ready to step out of your comfort zone? Previously, we explored the power of empathy, a bridge that connects people and deepens our humanity. Now, let's turn to another subtle yet powerful indicator of unwise thinking, the fear of change. The fifth sign, fear of change, when the comfort zone becomes a mental trap. Some people cling to old habits long after they've outlived their purpose. They're like children afraid of the dark, hesitant to step outside what they know. But life, as we all know, is a river. It flows, it bends, and it constantly transforms. The wise learn to adapt and move with it. The foolish, they try to hold water in their hands, only to watch it slip through their fingers. Take Michael, for example, a man who spent his entire life in a quiet neighborhood. He knew every corner, every neighbor, every routine. When his grown children encouraged him to move to a new area for better opportunities, he resisted. Why should I leave? I know everyone here, he said. But time went on. Friends moved away, familiar shops closed, and the neighborhood began to change. Despite his resistance, the world around him continued to move forward. Eventually, Michael made the decision to relocate and live closer to his children. Only then did he realize that this new environment not only brought him comfort but also opened doors to experiences he had never imagined. Fear of change doesn't just keep us in the safe zone, it holds us back from discovering something greater. Stoic philosophy reminds us, change is inevitable, and only by embracing it with an open heart can we truly live a full and meaningful life. If you find yourself resisting change, pause and ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen? And what's the best that could come of this? Life never stands still. If you don't learn to move with it, you'll be left behind. Always remember, change is a stepping stone to growth. Resisting it only keeps you stuck, trapped in fear. Up next, we'll dive into the sixth sign, a habit that may seem harmless, but quietly distances you from wisdom, talking more than listening. Have you ever met someone like that? Previously, we discussed the fear of change, a force that holds people back in their comfort zones and causes them to miss out on valuable opportunities. But there's another subtle sign that hinders growth and can even destroy our closest relationships: talking too much without truly listening. The sixth sign, talking more than listening. Have you ever met a family member or colleague who always insists they know everything? They dominate every conversation, interrupt others constantly, and rarely take the time to genuinely listen. This is a clear sign of someone who talks more than they listen, a classic trait of ignorance. These people often fall in love with the sound of their own voice and dismiss the perspectives of others. Not only does this create tension, but it also causes real harm to close relationships, especially within families. Let me tell you a story about John, a father I once knew. Every evening at dinner, John would completely take over the conversation. His kids tried to share stories about their day at school, but John would constantly interrupt, launching into tales of his own glorious experiences. When his wife made suggestions about improving the family's financial situation, John brushed her off immediately, insisting that his way was the only way. The saddest part? John had no idea that his behavior made his family feel unheard, unappreciated, and increasingly distant. Listening is not a passive act. It's an intentional skill, one that requires true focus and respect for others. Stoic philosophy reminds us that listening is the path to learning and growth. In silence, we find understanding and wisdom. On the other hand, talking without listening is like sowing seeds in barren soil. Nothing will ever grow there. If you see yourself in John's story, now is the perfect moment to change. Next time your child wants to talk about their day, or your partner offers their thoughts, pause and truly listen. Don't just wait for your turn to speak. Try to understand. By doing so, you'll not only strengthen your family bonds but also cultivate a home filled with love, respect, and mutual understanding. In the previous section, we talked about the power of listening, a simple yet profound skill that can heal and strengthen relationships. Now, it's time to reflect on the journey we've just taken together. Remember, the wise person listens, while the foolish one just talks. So, we've gone through the 6 clear signs of a foolish person. But wait, before you click away and start wondering, does this mean I'm foolish? Take a moment. The truth is, all of us, at some point in life, have displayed one or more of these traits. Maybe we've been arrogant, maybe we've clung too tightly to what's familiar, or, let's be honest, maybe we've talked too much without really listening. But here's the key message. Recognizing these signs isn't about judging yourself, it's about growing. Stoic philosophy teaches us, wisdom doesn't come from always being right. It comes from learning continuously, admitting when we're wrong, and having the courage to grow. Every foolish behavior we've discussed, it's actually a golden opportunity, a stepping stone to becoming wiser. So if you see yourself in any of these signs, don't panic. See it as a call to evolve. Step out of that cozy comfort zone. Listen more, blame less, and most importantly, Embrace change, even when it feels uncomfortable. This journey of self-improvement isn't meant for the perfect. It's meant for the brave, for those willing to look in the mirror and say, I can be better. Always remember, foolishness is temporary, but wisdom is a lifelong journey. And on that journey, you're never alone. Keep growing, keep learning, and if this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so we can keep exploring meaningful lessons together. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.